I'm going to dive right in. My name's Randy Keener. I'm an infrastructure architect at VMware and responsible for all the technical oversight of the VMware on VMware program that we have, which is basically being an evangelist for using our products and leveraging them internally so that we can use that as people ask us, how do you use your products internally? And we want to have a good story behind that. Presenting with me is my boss, Drew Kramer, who has the ultimate responsibility of VMware on VMware, which means he sends me emails and says, hey, can you take care of this? This is a good idea.
I get the money, too.
And he gets the money. Yeah. He does get the money, so for the initiatives, but not for... and then also, Tim Myers is a senior architect. He is behind the architecture of View 4.0 and the View 4.5 stuff that we've done internally. He's been an invaluable resource.
I'm really here just to make sure none of you fall asleep.
And to correct me when I'm wrong. That's the thing. So that should be pretty cool. So diving right in, what we thought we'd do is give you a little bit, well, here's the disclaimer that I have to show, but we wanted to give you a little bit of an idea before Tim dives into the architecture of View about, the VMware on VMware program, which is sort of in its infancy and something that we're trying to build. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to give some people an idea of what we're actually doing internally. Now, I would walk more this way, but I have a feeling I would probably fall right off the edge, so I'm just going to kind of hang out up here. So the agenda for today, a little bit of an overview on what VMware on VMware is, affectionately called VOV internally. Wasn't on board with that terminology at first, but it's kind of grown on me. Then we'll do, successes that we've had, some opportunities that we have moving forward, and we'll get into, Tim will get into a deep dive on the architecture that we're using internally for View, both 4.0 and then moving forward to the latest release of 4.5, which I believe was announced this morning. So we can talk about it.
But before we dive into that, is anyone cold in here? I'm kind of chilly. I asked him to turn the heat up a little bit.
I'm baking.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I actually asked him to turn the air down so we'd all get a little cooler. So I think the air just came on.
Thought it was just me. Okay, so dogfooding. So as many of you know, there's that myth that Paul Maritz was the one who coined the phrase, and being the CEO of VMware, I figured it would be good to look that up and make sure, and so I looked up at Wikipedia, and sure enough, an email that he had sent during his days at Microsoft encouraging the PM for Lab Manager to utilize their products more internally, eat your own dog food. And at first, I really wasn't cool with this term. It just kind of sounded like something that I wouldn't want to be involved with, but after really finding the history behind it, it actually made more sense. Then a couple folks like to refer to it as, drinking your own champagne. The second one there that comes from Tony Scott, I really can't get on board with the ice creaming thing. I think there's things on the internet that have kind of soured me towards that. And drinking the Kool-Aid, that's the one I like, because I do that. I mean, I love our products. I'm passionate about them. I think they're the best products out there on the market, and being a part of not only rolling them out internally, but having the ability to feed that back into engineering and see your ideas formulate into products or features, it's pretty rewarding as being in IT. So, and the last one's one of my favorite ones. Dan Anderson works on the Ghetto team. He's principal architect at VMware. His favorite terminology is "I bleed VMware blue," and I think most of us in the organization feel that same way. We want to see the product succeed no matter what. The Ghetto team is responsible for all the labs that are going on downstairs. They did a fantastic job this year. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go down there, but it looks pretty cool. Very industrial looking, which I like. It's all black, which again I like, and they have some pretty cool stuff going on down there. So if you haven't gone downstairs, I really recommend taking some of the hands-on labs. For those of you who have been at VMware before, we used to have like 2 hands-on labs, which were Workstation, Fusion, and we had ACE. And right now we have about 30 different topics that you can go down and take the labs at your own pace. It's really cool stuff. We had some really good architecture behind what they're doing. Has anybody here gone down and taken any of those? I mean, good feedback so far? Were they interesting? Good stuff? What's that? Crap? Oh, crashed. Oh, well, Shit, after that whole huge build-up.
Everybody, hold on. I'm going to go deal with him right now. me, sir. You need to come with me.
So we need to have a little one-on-one. Tim's going to take you downstairs and run you through some of those labs just to make sure you have a good experience with them. But for those of you who've been here before, I mean, that's quite a huge step forward from what we were able to offer in the past, and I think it's pretty fantastic that we can have so many topics that people can touch, feel, understand how they work, and I've taken a few of them. The Redwood lab has been one of my favorite ones, I think, just because it gives you a real good overview of what that is, and that's a product I think it's due to announce tomorrow, and that's our cloud product. I made sure I could talk about that with Catherine. She said it was okay.
I think people have heard of it already.
Yeah. Well, I think the last blog I saw was, "Is Redwood dead?" And Redwood, is the code name we use internally, and obviously, it's not dead. It's very much alive, and it's going to be released and announced tomorrow. So what's the vision for VMware on VMware? We need to be VMware's first and best customer. And this is, it's not uncommon. I was talking with Cisco, EMC, and they all have the same mantra. We need to be the best at what we do. We need to utilize our products better than anybody else, and we need to be able to showcase that. And so what we operate under is the ideal that we need to build a showcase environment so that we can partner with marketing, we can partner with all these different groups to showcase our products to drive sales, right? I mean, people want to know how we use our stuff. We need to be able to bring them in and show them how IT uses it, and there should be a wow factor there, like, wow, you can really do this with it? Wow, you can do this with it. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that utilize our products in fantastic ways, and part of what I'm doing is partnering with those guys and seeing, how do other companies use our products? Now that I can get my head out of the sand and figure out how we use them, there's opportunity there to go out and see how other people use it, because I think there's some great innovation that happens outside. And I want to be able to kind of integrate that, take feature requests, and utilize those things to make better products.
And I think it's really about creating, as the diagram shows, a closed loop of interaction between the various organizations inside of VMware, including the R&D department, where the product development life cycle is represented there, and getting into that feedback loop early and often to provide our perspective as IT professionals on how we would like to see the product, move and change. And of course, we find a few bugs along the way, but that's in the alpha and beta stage, hopefully before it gets to you guys.
Yeah, the idea of that is we find the bugs before our customers do, right? I mean, I think that's very important, and that's part of the whole, mantra behind Dogfooding, and it's been a lot of fun, and we get to learn a lot about the products, about how the development life cycle. It's become very valuable to the R&D teams to utilize, a real-world customer scenario, and then we can present that to them as customers. So we've broken the VMware on VMware down into 3 phases, and I think these 3 phases kind of fit into these little bubbles. Driving product innovation, that's getting to use the products, getting them in a sandbox, and we have new products, we have new companies that we acquire, we have new feature sets that we want to test. Well, we need to get involved in those things, really early, so we start understanding how they operate, how do they work, how can we utilize these things internally, so that when we move on to driving the product strategy is like, there's business justification. It's not, we don't just blindly roll out our products because we have to. I mean, we have to, but we got to have some reasoning behind it. So there's 2 phases of that. There are two aspects to that. There's the exit criteria for engineering. Like, what's their, they have to successfully roll out or have a successful rollout in VMware IT before they can GA their products. And so they have their own success criteria for that. And for us, it's figuring out how that's going to fit into our environment. Like, what makes sense, what doesn't. We need to be utilizing our products, and if we can't, we need to feed that back into engineering and tell them why we can't use it. And that's valuable information, because there may be other groups out there that, it might seem like a cool feature, but if no one's going to use it, it really doesn't matter, right? We shouldn't be wasting cycles on it. And then driving product direction, efficient and effective feedback is basically coming correct to the R&D community, saying, this is the stuff we think's different. Here's some bugs that we've found. We triage them with them. We go through the whole process of deciding on if it's an environmental thing or if it's an actual bug in the code. So the higher skill set that we have and the more understanding we have of what that product is at an early stage will allow us to give better feedback, so that we know what the differences are. We know this is introduced as a bug. We know that it's coming from the code that was introduced and not maybe the underlying virtual stack that may have been configured incorrectly. And so a lot of that comes back to the skill sets that we have and understanding our products, understanding it from the ground up. And that becomes very difficult as we have more and more products that we have to do this for. I mean, I've been here about 5.5 years. I've seen us go from a small base to now we have a huge amount of products that we're testing, especially the companies that we buy, products that are already baked that we just rebrand, and then we have to figure out how those fit into our environment, how there's overlap, where there's gaps. So the challenges that we face with that are, again, the growing number of products that we have in our portfolio. So the earlier we can get into the M&A acquisitions, the earlier we can do integration testing between certain products that we have and where this new product is supposed to fit in and feed that back into them, I think is key because it's going to help us figure out where that goes and then figure out where that can go in a customer's scenario as well. Another challenge we have is the skill set and knowledge that we have has to continually be updated and growing so that our folks can, like I said, understand what these new product features introduce and then how we can make sure that they keep up to date on all the new features and functionality. I mean, there's so many cool things that come out with vSphere. Storage I/O and memory optimization. We need to make sure we're on top of that. We understand what it means, and then when we go out and we roll that out internally, we're utilizing those things. So if a customer comes in and wants to know, well, how do you guys utilize this? We can show them rather than just having a canned demo. It's actually real world scenario, and this is how we've done it. This is problems that we saw, and then this is how we overcame them. The operational tunnel vision is something that I suffered from when I first came to VMware. I was a workstation guy. And, I was like, wow, I come in, well, what's this ESX product? And I was a sysadmin, I was like, I could have used this in so many of my other jobs that I had, and it was amazing. We have so many products available to us. I mean, I think one of the first things that happens when we acquire a company or we get new employees that come in, everybody goes to the build page, right? Because you can download whatever you need to do, and you get the serial number page, right, too. And you go in, and you have access to all these cool products. And being an IT guy, it's like, it's a playground, right? You have so many things that you can play around with and so many ways that you can implement in our products. It's amazing. But sometimes you get into that tunnel vision where you got your job, this is what I'm doing, and it's hard to think outside the box. It's hard to figure out how these products all fit together when you're just focused on, I need to make sure this is up and running all the time, and I don't want to introduce anything new because then it might have an impact on my operational uptime. And along with that is balancing the infrastructure stability. We need to make sure we're using our products early and often. We are early adopters, like I said, pre-beta through GA. And being an early adopter of that stuff is going to be key, but also we have to maintain somewhat of a stability, otherwise the companies that, the infrastructure continues to go up and down. We need to make sure we treat everything, even the dogfooding, which we call dogfooding, which is where we're testing out new builds of products and we're continually upgrading. We treat that like a production environment. So if something goes down, it goes down, we get it back up. We call the engineers where, this is broke, we need to fix it. Convergence and overlap. Again, when we buy new companies, we buy new products, we need to figure out how those products fit into our infrastructure and decide where there's overlap. If there's overlap, okay, what product does it better than the other product? So we need to, staying on top of those things becomes somewhat difficult. And then keeping on top of partnerships and strategies. We make so many announcements that I use Google Alerts to figure out all the things that we have going on, things that we've announced, partnerships we have, that internally may not be floated around. So keeping on top of that becomes somewhat of a challenge. And, VMware does a lot of cool stuff. It's pretty fun to be a part of this company, and I would say I have the best job in the world. I get to see all our products, and I get to feel them, touch them, figure out how they integrate with our products, and it's kind of, it's like a big playground. So some of the VOV successes, if you wanted to speak to that, Drew?
Sure. Is there a slide for it?
Yes.
Thanks. I got to remember what I'm supposed to say. No, so basically just looking at how we use our environment internally, we're 97% virtualized, and everyone wants to know what the 3% is, so I'm not going to tell you. No.
We don't need to give any publicity.
The 3% is Oracle RAC in production. We have Oracle RAC running in dev test and stage, but we don't have it in production yet, not because it doesn't work. We know it works. We have it in all those other areas, as I mentioned, but because we're actually also in the midst of planning an 11G upgrade, so we're going to virtualize at that same time to minimize the downtime impact to the corporation. But the other success we have with that is the deployment of pre-beta code into production and offering that feedback. I mean, that's a very important aspect of our program, is getting the code as early as possible so that we can get into the feedback loop as early as possible. Partnering with all the various groups, as I mentioned earlier, is sort of a key aspect of the program to make sure we include everyone along the way in what we're asking for and what we're trying to accomplish. And at the end of the day, I mean, it isn't about, it's not an IT-centric program, it's a VMware-centric program, and we want to make sure that we're inclusive of all the various groups inside of VMware so that everyone can benefit from this program. And at the end of the day, it is about improving our products as well as interacting with our customers in a very positive way, what I call the IT to IT exchange. And I meet with the IT departments, the CIO staff, and the CIOs on a weekly basis in our briefing center and go through the details, some of which we're going to hit on later, about how we use our own products internally and overcoming some of the challenges around whether it be virtualizing Exchange, virtualizing databases, basically virtualizing virtually any workload. And so that's the real benefit of the program, is I get to reach out to customers such as yourselves, other IT professionals, and have an exchange of ideas and how we can solve problems together. I mean, it's a two-way street. We find out about things that our customers are doing, and we can offer some solutions that we've encountered as well, and vice versa. And so it's really opening that dialogue, and it is important.
So if I could,
yeah.
Some of this was something like, we were a small company when I started. We grew really fast. So everybody was changing, jobs were changing, the contacts you had disappeared. So getting this into a state where we now have buy-in from the key members of these different groups is important through the product development lifecycle, so that now we can have feedback from all those groups, and we can utilize that to get a strategic vision from not only what R&D says the product can do, to what product marketing shows or tells our customers the product can do, to field services, which will actually say this is actually what the product can do out there, and then feeding and aligning that back into using it internally so that we have kind of a common vision and a common goal that we can present to customers.
And just rounding out the successes, I don't want to skip over the vSphere seamless upgrades. Today we have the entire company upgraded to vSphere 4.1. There's just a couple of exceptions to that are around product compatibility. So we're running certain other products that still require 4.0, and we'll rev those together. And we were able to do that upgrade with no downtime to our internal customers and even to our external customers. Our goal for the next time around is that we will be doing the next vSphere upgrade, which will happen sometime in the near future, or not so near future, depending on the release date. But we want to do that during our IT blackout window. So that's going to be the next big challenge we're going to take on. And the reason for that is to really demonstrate the stability of that virtualization layer, not only to our internal customers, but to ourselves, and then ultimately a success story back to you guys. What we're trying to do here really, obviously is shift the way IT is run inside of companies. And, things like blackout windows and SOX compliance, they're all very important to being successful and to staying out of an orange jumpsuit, although I guess some of us are getting halfway there with this show. But, there is a better way and a different way that we should be approaching some of these things. Originally, when vMotion was first introduced, people were confused as to how to handle that. Do I need to file a change control ticket every time I do a vMotion? Do I need to, that sort of thing, right? And so, but today we take it for granted. So, going forward, do I need to file that change control to upgrade my vSphere platform in the middle of a blackout window? Hopefully someday we'll have that same chuckle. So, we're on the edge of that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And so the last one here, providing real-world user and admin scenarios, and this comes from our R&D team, is the benefit they saw as we were going through the Vue 4.5 release was we actually gave them some, not only user feedback, where we had 400 users running in our Vue dog food environment, if you will, but we came up with a lot of UI changes that came from the admins that were administering the infrastructure, saying, we could use this or this makes more sense. And that was huge feedback to them, so that as we bring that out to customers, it would be more of a real world, oh yeah, this makes sense, or this is how I would use it, or this is my thought process behind how I would manage this environment. And I think that was something that was very beneficial, and I think as you guys see the product when it comes out, you're going to see that it's a pretty robust product. There's a lot of thought put into it, not only from what the R&D folks think needs to happen, but coupled with our experience as well, and I think it makes the product that much better.
And I think taking that to the next step in terms of the program is being able to document what I view as sort of the operational aspects of say, running a Vue instance. Not just how do I install the product and what are its features, but how do I operate it on a day-to-day basis? What problems am I going to encounter? What challenges are there? When's the best time to push the recompose button? Should I use kiosk mode? And all of those things they're all good questions, and we eventually hope to be able to address those directly with you folks. Today that happens informally, but as the program progresses, we want to get to the point where we can ultimately essentially hand you a copy of our run book about how we did it. It doesn't mean that you want to do it the same exact way, but at least it gives you a view into, I guess another pun there, how we think we operate it, and gives you an opportunity to look at that and take it for yourselves.
So some of the opportunities that we see moving forward as we grow this group, or we grow this initiative internally, is, again, early adoption of our products. That's not always easy. A lot of them are new, so we have a lot of folks that are, we have to learn how these new products work. There's some products that we just recently acquired that are very mature already, and they have a huge customer base. So what we need to do is figure out, okay, how does this all work together? Where does it fit in our environment? And how do we utilize this in a way that is a showcase environment, utilizing all the aspects of that particular tool or that set of tools that now we have to fit into what we're already doing. We have to, if we have a tool that already does that we're licensed for, well, then we drop the licensing for it and we end up using our tool, right? So as a whole, R&D doesn't buy a lot of software. We either build it ourselves or we look for companies to acquire it and then incorporate it into it. At least that's been my experience, being here for the few years that I have. So, and part of that is setting an opportunity to set examples of how we do that. We get new products in, people are going to wonder how we're going to use it. How do I, do I need to buy this, or what is it going to do for me? So we have, an opportunity to talk to the folks internal IT who have done it, to come up with, this is how we did it. This is where we found benefits, or we write white papers, or we do some reference architecture on, this is how you do it. This is how it's beneficial. There's a lot of products that we've come out with that, folks might not know what they do. So part of that is evangelizing internally so that we get a lot more buy-in, and then that feeds in, to the outside world to say, these are great products, there's great feature sets that we have available, and this is how you should implement them. So part of that, too, is, as Drew alluded to, is leveraging partners and customers and other IT organizations so that we can use them, find out what they're doing. They're doing cool stuff. There's lots of companies that do stuff, and one of my things is they do it because they can, right? It doesn't necessarily mean we want them to do it that way, but because you can do it that way, people are going to do it, right? Just because they can. So, we want to figure out how they're using it. We want to see the different innovations that have gone in the bigger companies or even the smaller companies about things, that they find interesting that maybe they've come up with a workaround for, and they've figured out a better way to do something. So we want to get that feedback in and get it to the right folks to see how it can be utilized as maybe a feature in the future. And then automation. Automation is key. I'm a huge fan of automation. Sometimes we get so busy with things that it's easier just to kind of, I'll just do that by hand, right? But, if you do it and take the time to automate it once, then from then on, you're set, right?
That's actually particularly useful and good when you're doing dog food, because inevitably, right after we've spent all that time manually installing some pre-beta release thing, an engineer comes running into Randy's office and says, "Oh wait, there's a new build," right? And so we have to start over from scratch. So we affectionately call that the rip and replace method. And when you have to do that manually time and time again, you start to lose your mind. So the automation around those sorts of operational aspects is key. Figuring out good strategies for bare metal deployment of the virtualization layer, figuring out good strategies for being able to rip the configuration out of something so that you can reapply the new bits, if you will, and get that config glued back in a quick automated fashion is important as well. And it does drive good discipline over time. The more automation, the better.
Yeah, and the quicker and more efficient we are able to do that. Build-to-build upgrades are not, it's not a customer-supported scenario. So you'll see when you guys buy products, you can upgrade. Well, when we're doing build-to-build or build-to-build, changes, I can't say it's an upgrade. It's rip and replace. We don't know what's changed. The database structure may have changed. We don't want any stale entries that cause any kind of issues. So we actually rip everything out no matter what's laying on top of that, and then we replace it. So the more we can automate that, the easier and more efficient it's going to be to actually put those things in place. Next slide. And so this is just a roadmap of some of the things that we were doing for 2010.
It's an eye chart on purpose. Don't try to read it.
And it's not meant for you to actually read so much as to just see that the sheer numbers of things that we get involved with product releases. Now, this is an old snapshot, I think, from either March or May. So a lot of these things have been added to. We have to go from, everybody wants to be on vSphere 4.1, but we also have to remember we're still doing updates to 4.0, 4.01, 4.02. And those are things that still need to be integrated testing. We have a lot of new products that are coming out. They have to be integration tested together. And we just got to make sure that those things happen so that when people want to know, hey, how do you guys run this and this and this together? Which makes sense. We need to make sure we're doing it first. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Tim Myers over here.
So the next person that gets up and walks out of the room, I'll meet you outside after the show.
I mean, it's probably me, they're running away, but...
All right, so before I get too far, I want to just poll a little bit and kind of understand the audience of who I'm talking to. How many people today have Vue implemented already? Raise your hand. Okay. Out of those people that have your hand raised, raise your hands back up again. How many people are running Vue 4? How many people are looking at Vue 4.5? Okay. Any of you put your hands down, you're in the wrong session. How many people have 1,000 or more desktops in production today? Okay. Okay. Good.
Those are the ones I want to meet with after.
So since you did such a great job of advancing the slides, I'm going to let you continue to do that so I can actually read them.
Sure. No problem.
No. Drew, you can do that. That's great.
That's what I get paid the big
got your
bucks
back,
for, right?
Guys, I'm not going to stand on a podium. I'm not a sales guy. I'm not a manager. I come from the field. No offense. I come from the field. When I first started working for VMware, I worked in professional services. I was a senior architect. I live in Florida. I spend most of my time today in Palo Alto. Florida is now my vacation home. My wife doesn't really agree with that statement, but that's okay. I went from professional services as being a senior consultant to a consulting architect. Worked a lot back in the days on VCB. We did a lot with Site Recovery Manager. My team does a lot of interesting things, most of which are try and make what Randy and the VOV program put on paper a reality. We're not perfect. We have challenges just like anybody else. But kind of our philosophy is if we get a bunch of people in a bunch of smart people in a room and apply a little bit of common sense to it, we can typically walk away from that with a pretty good solution. Okay. A little bit about how I originally got involved with Vue is when our professional services originally split into practices. At the time, VDM was kind of one of the lower held practices. There were a lot of people that were excited by the terminology of VDI, a lot of questions as to how to get that done. I kind of took that upon myself to try and find a little bit more about it, see if there were people that I could help. did a lot of interesting things. Was asked internally to actually participate in our internal rollout, and we can talk a little bit about that. Our internal rollout really started several years ago, way back when it was VDM 1.1. It was one of those internal, unofficially coined dog food rollouts that was kind of pushed down from management up above as we need to do a better job of using our products. What we have found as our company has grown, and I think current numbers we're like to 7,800 employees, 30 some odd products, right, is that we're so focused on technology that a lot of times there are individually smart people working in different rooms that may not be talking to each other because they're so focused on doing what it is that they need to do. A lot of what I get to do is kind of knock on each one of those doors and try and bring those people together and have a conversation with them about some of the challenges that you guys are facing. I try to talk to as many customers as I can, both internally and externally, because we have a lot of different groups inside of VMware that, quite honestly, we have to consider customers as well. Kind of the one thing I've learned over the last 5+ years is that there's an answer. It's not always the right answer. It's not always the answer that we want to hear, and it's not always the quickest turnaround answer. But one of the things that's become really beneficial for us and my team is that we've established relationships with our own internal R&D. And when we go in and sit down and have a conversation with a developer, one of the first things they say to us is, we want to get that feedback from customers. We want to understand how these guys are actually using the product. Part of our internal rollout initiative is not only to quantify the stability and the features of a product that we're asking you guys to go out and implement and use, but it's also to bring a real customer kind of close to us and close to that R&D community so that if there is an issue, if there is a problem, right, the intent is that we would see it first. We would have the opportunity to identify what that problem is, report that feedback directly back into R&D, and get that fixed before you guys ever run into it.
Sometimes we actually jump in there and get a operational solution in place. You might call it a workaround, but in some cases it's actually a solution that we then roll that out with the product, and no one's the wiser.
Yeah, and Drew has a good point. We solve problems on a daily basis, and every company has problems. VMware has its own slew of problems, but we try to take that problem and change it around into an opportunity, right? And the opportunity is to identify what that problem is and come up with a couple of different, workable solutions and give you that information. So kind of with that in mind, I'm, personally happy, and one of the reasons that I invited Randy and Drew to kind of participate in this, because this was originally my session, was to...
Thanks, Tim, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Right here, bro.
Just giving you an opportunity to add value, that's all.
Randy, can you do these slides for me? Sure, man, no problem.
Guys, I've been on site since Wednesday, working over getting the labs ready to actually start today. I've had very little sleep, so I have a tendency to be a little humorous at times. Just kind of bear with me. One of the nice things about the VOV program is that as we've gotten bigger and as we've expanded our product portfolio, the challenge of maintaining the same level of quality that a lot of people have become accustomed to over time has become increasingly difficult, right? People are trying to get their product done. They're trying to get it to market. They're trying to get it out there and get it available to everyone, right? And we're going, guys, slow down. Hold on. Let's roll this out internally, right? Let's treat this like a production environment. Let's get true feedback from our customers that don't actually... We have some people in VMware that aren't technical, okay? I'll admit that. But, we get feedback from what we would consider to be normal users, right? And we understand the operational challenges associated with that. So one of the biggest impacted products, in my opinion, of this is View 4.5. I've spent the last 8 months of my life working with this product kind of day in and day out and losing sleep over that feedback mechanism and making sure that things work and making that decision that, we're announcing View 4.5 at the show. We're going to deploy View 4.5 to the entire lab section over there, which is 480 desktops. Every single one of those desktops is going to run kiosk mode. A huge portion of those desktops are going to be served from across-country data centers, All that stuff has huge challenges associated with it, right? And we understand that. But we've got to continually progress, push things to the next level, because being in the job that I'm in, I can't sit there and look you right in the eye and say, go for it, if we haven't done it ourselves and we haven't proven that it works and we haven't given you that reliability and that nod of confidence that you need to have. So, based on that and the fact that I don't really beat around the bush, I was asked to participate in the View stuff. What we did is came up with a plan to actually migrate from the original VDM 2.1 that was kind of in play at the time, migrate to View 4. Right? Opportunities for us. We can get rid of RDP and we can go to PCOIP. We looked at, operational cost of having a large amount of gear, compute resources, and storage localized to the areas where the users were connecting to. Anyone that connects with PCP across country with 100 milliseconds of latency should notice a tremendous difference than if they were doing it with RDP. Right? I mean, I RDP into my house all the time back in the day, and it just was insanely frustrating, especially over a crappy hotel connection. So, some of the reasons that we were actually looking at doing this originally was around the same things that you guys were looking at, right? We want that better user experience. We want to be able to scale to a larger amount of desktops. We want to get to the point with if anyone that we can actually force a View desktop down their throat internally, we want every single employee running a View desktop, right? From my perspective, that's what everyone is interested in these days, right? Server consolidation, we got that. We've been doing that for a little while, right? There's a lot of people out in the communities that are already doing that. There's a lot of people that are struggling with doing the VDI thing, right? And they've looked at other solutions. They've looked at other connection brokers. They looked at other alternatives. There are those people that want to stay faithful to VMware because they've had that long-lasting relationship. But quite frankly, right, we were falling a little short in terms of competitive nature and the solution that we offered, and we understand that, and we're working to address that. So if we get back to View 4, right? View 4, we got PCOIP, right? And we got a little bit better management opportunity. We got, kind of all of those different things, and a lot of those were some of the reasons why we wanted to do that. Plus, right, we have what I call snotty developers that are used to getting everything they want because it all rolls into the R&D budget, and somebody wants a new quad-core Nehalem with 86,000 gig of memory, and all they're going to do is surf the internet, they would get that, right? So, we step back and look at that and we say, you know what, guys, you really don't need that. Our receptionist doesn't need a 27-inch iMac. They just need a View client. You can send that 27-inch iMac to my house, right? So this is another reason I'm involved in this, because I really want that iMac. But anyway, being able to standardize on an image, right, instead of having one image that was spread across 18 different types of hardware, right? These are all kind of things that we looked at. I'm sure same type of things that you looked at. And obviously we're working very hard on the dog food initiative, right? That's become ever so more important to us now than it ever has before. Vanna, next slide. Awesome. So, just real quickly, basically what we have is what I would consider to be our recommended solution for you guys moving forward, and I really hope that slide is accurate. So, we have RSA authentication remotely. Right? Just standard domain authentication internally. We have security servers in play. They're being front-ended by load balancers. The gentleman that actually set that up for us is standing in the back of the room in an orange shirt. Everyone turn around and look at him and embarrass him. Hi, Lewis.
Lewis Lamb.
Thanks. We wanted to do it and do it the same way that you would, right? We want that reliable connection coming internally. We're not going to rely on, one single IP point of failure. So we have load balancers in play. We have, 2 security servers that actually sit out there in our quote-unquote DMZ. They're paired to their individual connection brokers internally. They're set up for the RSA authentication, right? So up until recently, I had to carry around that crazy little key fob that you can actually wash and dry, by the way, and it still works. Not that I've ever done that, but, that's how you would authenticate, right? And you would come in and log into your View desktop. Internally, kind of on the inside of that firewall, we had a similar pair. We had another set of connection brokers that would actually, funnel our desktops internally. We have obviously an ESX cluster of hosts. We have databases that sit out there and, take care of our update manager traffic and take care of our VC traffic and take care of our image composer traffic and all those sorts of things. And we've, I've been a personal fan of trying to come up with a solution that I can stand up and talk about that actually saves you money. And that's another thing, right? At the CEO level, people say, how much is this going to cost me, and why would I want to virtualize when I can go to spend $700 for a desktop, set it underneath my desk, versus the amount of CPU, storage, compute, SAN storage, all that stuff in the data center, cost per port, all those different things from a capacity planner situation, right? They kind of cause that price point to go up. So, that being said, we have certain desktops in our environment that are full VMs, right? We have, a majority of them where we're losing Image Composer. We're actually in the final stages of upgrading our production environment to View 4.5. What we did is, go to the next slide for me, Drew.
Certainly.
Keep going. Right? So one of the things that we did when we first kind of found out about the View 4.5 release and some of the things that it had was tried to get on the proactive approach, right? I mean, some of our senior View R&D leadership is actually sitting in the back of the office. I mean, in the back of the room right here, and I'll try not to embarrass him, but he has big challenges, right? I mean, we need to get View to market, and we need to give it scalability. We need to give it the enterprise readiness. We need to give it the management features that people need. We need to give them the end user experience that they want, and we need to give them the features that they've been asking for years, right? I mean, I don't think anybody in here is going to argue with that. So we have this laundry list of features that we're building into View 4.5. I was asked to participate. I jumped in with both feet. Today I'm lacking a little sleep, but that's okay. And you have to have View 4.5 in order to get to vSphere 4.1, right? I mean, not to go off the sidebar a little bit, but vSphere 4.1 gives you storage I/O control. It gives you memory compression. It gives you better performance. It kind of gives you all those things. Takes advantage of the newer hardware, right? So from my perspective, if I need to upgrade in order to take advantage of all those from a virtual desktop, then guess what? I'm positioning myself to actually increase that end user experience, right? Everybody in our company is an administrator of their local desktop. There's huge challenges with that, again, right? You guys get whatever you want. You're all R&D. You want the iMac? Get the iMac. You want administrative privileges? I'll give them to you twice. 2 different users, whatever you want. The problem with that is that there are people that are really, really good at developing code, and they're very, very dangerous on a Windows desktop, okay? And they log into the Windows desktop and go, oh, what does this do? And then the next thing you know, right, they're opening a support ticket to our help desk going, I just deleted this file and now my machine won't boot. So, from my perspective, we've got to figure out a way to address that. And the forefront of that is, if I'm going to take this thing that has become my baby and I've known as my desktop, and you're going to take that away from me, then you've got to give me something that's equivalent or better. You've got to give me something that from a performance perspective, screams bloody murder. I can log into my desktop, I can do whatever I want. I could check eBay 7 times to Sunday compared to my local machine underneath my desk, right? And all these things that people do. There's a separate side of that conversation that's, you know what, you guys need what it is that you need to work. You need a lockdown desktop, you need the basics and only the basics, and you don't need anything else. And oh, by the way, it's a non-persistent link clone pool, and you install anything in that image, the minute that you log out, it's all gone. You're going to get a clean desktop the next time you log in. You know what? Great philosophy. You cut down on the amount of troubleshooting that you have to do, so long as you guarantee that the base image is good, right? You tell your users, guys, you have a problem, log out, log back in. You'll get a different desktop. It's that whole philosophy of the virtual desktop itself being a, call it a mechanism or an entryway to get to your applications and your data. Again, that's all fine and dandy.
You want to get to the point where it's almost stateless, right? Obviously it has state, but you want to return it to the user in the exact same state that every time, right? Yeah,
and those are all very, very challenging things, right? And we deal with that, and we know that you guys deal with that. That was kind of much to my dismay of some of the things that we were hoping to release that have now been pushed back a little bit. But people need a way to get to Windows 7, right? I mean, Windows 7 is kind of the next big thing. How many people in here are using Windows 7 today? How many people in here want to get to Windows 7? Okay. How many people in here want a 27-inch iMac? Okay, good. All right, cool.
Because those Macs run Windows really well.
But I mean, there's all these things, right, that'll kind of help you get there. If these guys are strictly using a non-persistent desktop, and the next time they log in, they're now on Windows 7. Well, you know what? That's an easy thing to accomplish as long as you do your homework, right? I mean, I'm not suggesting that you go back and just magically push the button and make it happen, but you know that's one thing to think about. What we're doing over here is you know, besides a little daring, is we've got 480 desktops that are all running. They're all link clones. They're all running in kiosk mode. They're all running on a zero client. And you know, some of them are connecting to Miami, and some of them are connecting to Virginia, and some of them are connecting somewhere else. But the point is, right, while maybe not perfect, right, we're trying to set that example. We're trying to do what it is that we know that you guys at some point are hopefully going to want to do. And you know, there's going to be hiccups along the way. There's nothing in the IT industry, period, that's perfect, right? And I'm not going to try and stand up here and tell you that anything VMware related is perfect. But I can tell you that based off of the relationships that I have, there's an awful lot of people that are trying really, really hard to address your problems. So that being said, right, internally, some of the things that we're looking at is, can we eliminate one or two of the desktops that are sitting underneath all of our development community right now? Can we give them a virtual desktop? Can we give them NFS space? Can we give them something that will perform good enough where these guys can go and do their thing, and we're eating the View dog food, we're giving them an environment that they can access from anywhere, not just the local desk, the desktop underneath their desk. Those are some of the things that we're working on right now. We're not looking at the normal, what I would consider to be task worker or knowledge worker. We're looking at the complete opposite end of the scale. We're looking at people that, are going to need 2 CPUs and 8 gig of RAM, that are going to need to run Windows 7 64-bit. And can we do that and give them an experience that's good enough for them where they'll somewhat voluntarily release those desktops that are underneath their desk?
And I think that's the key, is we want them to give up those desktops rather than us taking them from them. If we can reach that state, that's...
And I want to bring this to a reality check here. I mean, how many of you in your IT shops, you have software development going on? You have in-house application development. I mean, there's probably everyone in the room, right? And how many of those same folks do you have, offshore development, or development happening in a country whose intellectual property laws may not be exactly what you'd like them to be? So what we're trying to do here with this environment for our own developers is set up something that all of you can leverage for your developers as well. And there's a lot of benefits around having that whole thing running in your data center, be it your private cloud or in a data center that you own in the public cloud. And the developers are, the only thing going over the wire to your offshore development is a display protocol. So that's where we're really trying to kind of pave the way for all of you as well. If we can solve it internally for our developers, then it should be applicable to your developers as well. And
it's not an easy path, right? There's a lot of resistance to that as far as the engineering community goes. So if we can build them a robust enough environment, then we get that kind of grassroots thing going where people start realizing, wow, I can do my job in this. I can develop code. I don't have to download my whole source tree to my C drive anymore. I can do it this way. So part of the View environment is to offer them an alternative to how they do their development every day.
And don't get me wrong, right? I mean, we have our fair share of what we would consider to be production desktops, right? I mean, we have, 1,700, 1,900, something along those lines, desktops that are considered production desktops that have change control and everything else wrapped around them, probably the exact same way that you do. They do scheduled recompose and scheduled maintenance and kind of all those different things operationally. But, that's great, and it works out good for them. But, as we continue to grow, we continue to get racks of gear that show up on our dock. We've got to put that stuff somewhere. We've got to house it somewhere, right? We've got somebody that, for a living, they look and they scout data center space somewhere with really, really good connectivity and come up with viable options for us to actually put this gear and potentially save a lot of money. Well, you know what? If I can't reliably connect to that gear and use it and get the expected response that I want from it, then it's worthless to me, right? Unless I make the decision to house it internally. So, these are some of the other reasons why we actually want to make this work, right? Especially, 80% of our company is research and development, right? We've got developers that are begging for boxes, they're begging for desktops. When we actually told them that we're looking at doing this View 4.5 thing on the high performance compute side, they were all over it. Sign me up. Where do I sign? What survey do I need to fill out? How do I get on that list? And these have been a lot of different things that we've been working with. View 4.5 gives you that ThinApp entitlement and integration perspective too, right? So for those of you that are actually leveraging ThinApp now, you can do the entitlement from the UI, right? I mean, that's a really nice feature. And I'm personally a big fan of ThinApp, and I wish more people used it, right? But it's kind of blatantly obvious to a certain amount of you. ThinApp is more of a science, right? It's not necessarily a plug-and-play type thing. You've got to do your research and make sure that you actually package that application correctly, or you're never really going to get the expected response that you want, right? And that final step of dog food, again, one of the things that Randy was able to position with View 4.5 is that doing this internal deployment effectively got inserted into the exit criteria of the product. So it wasn't until people like me said, yeah, it's okay, I think, if we feel pretty good about this, and didn't, slam the R&D team with bugs, that they would actually kind of, behind the scenes meet and make the decision to actually release and launch, right? And again, the amount of time that we've actually spent working in this, and you know what we did? We took people that have never ever managed the VDI environment, and we actually put them in charge of managing this. We wanted to get that kind of true feel of, what it would feel like for these guys to have to now be responsible for building pools, building desktops, fixing issues if they came up. Hey, my desktop locked off. Can you log me off? Can you assign me another desktop? Can you tell me how much CPU and memory that my desktop is using? All those different things. And these guys struggled, right? And we watched them kind of eventually get with it. And there was a lot of feedback that was provided, to Randy's point earlier, to the UI team to actually try to make that administration of this environment a little easier. Sure, it's easy to build a desktop, install the agent, add it to a pool, go and tell somebody to connect to it. Piece of cake, right? But there's all those things that happen after that, and there's all those things that you need to consider while you're doing that are really kind of the science of this. A lot of moving pieces to view, a lot of different things that happen, right?
Tim, we got a couple more minutes here.
Okay. So this is our View 4.5 topology, okay? What you're going to notice, if you paid any attention at all and are still awake to the earlier slide, is that nothing's changed. Okay? Because we feel good about the implementation, we feel good about the architecture, we feel good about the way that it's been designed and operated and it's failed over and kind of all those different things. Load balance, the whole bit. Good with that, right? What we're looking at doing is, and I hate to use that cloud term because I know so many people use it, but we're transitioning this to the cloud. Right? We're going to take our entire environment, we're going to push it somewhere else besides the West Coast, somewhere besides the Bay Area, somewhere besides where it's always been and it's always lived. Right? And that's kind of one of our key quote-unquote opportunities if we can validate the fact that PCOIP gives us what we need. Right? And so far so good. It's worked out pretty good. Right? Some of the challenges that some of you faced over in the labs are we're limited to the amount of connectivity that we're actually provided by the local vendor here. And we've had a couple of challenges there networking-wise. From a labs perspective, go ahead and go to the next slide for me, Drew. I'll come back to that. Go to the next slide. So if you haven't seen it, this is the actual room over there right now. This is something that's been weeks in development, right? We have multitudes of gear sitting in various locations that are all kind of seamlessly connected together. We've got 480 thin clients, and each thin client will get a dual display. We've got monitoring tools that are actually monitoring true PCOIP traffic. So we can take that information and we can report it back. Kind of the number one question that I personally get asked is, we figured out the desktop thing, we need to do PCOIP stuff. How do I know exactly how much PCOIP traffic that I need to allow for in my architecture? We got real-world numbers, right, that we're going to take away from this, that we can use to wrap into information that gets provided to you guys. The reality is, I can throttle it or I can let it go. The second reality is it really depends on what you're doing, right? If you're doing normal day-to-day work, it's not going to use so much. If you're running full-screen 720p HD video, like I always like to do when I'm trying to show somebody what it's doing, obviously it uses a lot more, right? So the key to this, at least from my perspective, has been understanding what your workload is going to look like. Give yourself a little bit of variance there, right? If you need to, lock it down after the fact or throttle the bandwidth or scale back the number of frames per second or whatever those things are, you can kind of do that after the fact, right? But at least initially, get yourself an environment set up where you can kind of see and understand exactly what's kind of happening. If you'll go back one slide, Drew,
I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Can't do that? So when we did our internal
left.
dogfooding, right, this is kind of what we targeted. A lot of our emphasis was on Windows 7 because we've done a lot of work with XP. We've struggled with Windows 7 up until this point, right? We're offering full Windows 7 support, so it makes sense that we need to do the majority of our homework at this point on validating that Windows 7 works well, that we can do things like Arrow, we can do things like ClearType, we can do all those things and not feel bad about making the recommendation to you guys to do it. Right? So we had Windows 7 64-bit VMs, dedicated automatic assignment. These guys actually have full applications installed into them. And we had a certain subset of users that actually use those pools. We had the same thing, except instead of the image look the same, but instead of them actually being locally installed, we thin-apped all of them, and we actually provided that same experience and didn't tell them that they were actually being thin-apped to a share somewhere, right, and doing streaming. We did the lower-end 32-bit task worker, right? The receptionist as an example, or whoever's kind of doing light-duty work. We did a lot of work with kiosk mode because that's kind of one of the things that we've been waiting for, right? And a lot of you have been waiting for various reasons. We did a 32-bit VM, very similar to number one, except dropped it from 64-bit to 32-bit to make sure that we didn't see any kind of incompatibilities there. And then finally, the other thing that we looked at was local mode, right? How does Windows 7 perform in local mode? How long is it taking to check out? What does it look like when I check it out over the WAN? How do I check it back in? How do I patch it? How do I do all these things, right? All these things are questions that we're trying to answer so that when someone comes, you go to your local sales representative or you go look on VMware's website for this information, there's real data to support the answers that we're giving you. So basically what we came up with was about 360 people that were spread out amongst those pools from a wide variety of groups inside of VMware, not just R&D, not just the sales force, but people that are hard to please, right? People that are used to getting what they want.
I'll just jump in there and say that Paul Moritz, our CEO, is using the local mode on his laptop, so we're getting a lot of good feedback directly from him as well. So it is really a cross-section of the company. And
that's, and it's a good point, right? I mean, our e-staff is using this. They've been using this for quite some time, right? And that makes the people that are responsible for the product, with knock knees because they're afraid of what that experience is going to look like because them and their teams have been working so hard on this product and they don't want to have egg on their face when they present it up to the C-level. So, we've done a lot of things to try to make sure that this is going to be a good product for you guys. We've got, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,000 hours of the operational administrative side of this, right? We've had the environment up and running for about 10,000 user hours. Gianta Day, again, one of the people that I referenced earlier who's in a position of being responsible for the success of this product, basically said, we need to dog food this as much as possible and create those scenarios that our customers are going to use. It's going to give us a better understanding of how the expectation to use this product is really going to be versus what we think it is. We get a lot of good feedback. We get the information that we need. I can go back to my guys and prioritize the fixes that need to happen, right? Which ultimately translates to a better product for you guys. Keep going.
Tim, I think we're right up to the hour here.
Okay.
Apologize for going so long.
There's my last slide.
We are at the last slide.
But I will say, I did want to say one thing. Is I don't know if we touched on it here, but through this scenario, we were able to do, I think there was something of 100+ bugs that were filed through internal IT, and there was about 4 major feature requests and many minor UI feature requests that came out of it that made it into this release. So.
And at that point, I just want to say, if you do have any questions, jump up to the mic. I have a few more minutes if you're not running off to your next thing. And otherwise, come up here afterwards and we can talk privately. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks for sticking it out.